and do a little some personnel news segment. We got a massive trade deal. First round draft pick many times in his career, max contract. Probably 4-year deal, 1-year cliff. Who knows? Who knows with you?
Great to have you.
Good to have you here.
Erik. What's going on?
Beautiful logo in the back. Welcome to the stream. How you doing, Erik?
Thank you. A long-time listener, first-time caller. Thanks for having me on, guys. Huge fan.
Yeah.
Great to see you.
Take us through the anatomy of the deal. Did they sit down with your parents? Tell you, hey, we're taking him to the big leagues. How did it come together? I mean, I imagine you're close to a lot of folks over there for a long time, but is there anything you can share about how someone becomes a general partner at a storied venture capital firm?
They brought a briefcase to my parents' house.
Yep.
And just been working the family for years.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. But yeah, I mean, seriously, you've known the team for a long time. What were the conversations like, and how did it all come together?
It's funny. Part of me wants to ask, why didn't you ask me this a few years ago? Why didn't they try to recruit me a few years ago?
Sure.
But it's kind of like when someone amazing asks you out, don't ask too many questions. Just say yes.
Sure.
Kind of my philosophy. But basically what happened was, so Mark and I have been close for a long time. And every year I basically, sort of give him a state of the union on my career and how I'm thinking about things. And this year I was like, hey, I know I want to marry venture into what I'm doing. I have this media company. We've got sort of this founder social network thing, and everything around my career has been either investing or building communities, networks, media for founders.
Yep.
And so I was just like, I want to do it again, but I'm figuring out what is the right structure, how to do that. I could just start something, I could join something early. And then Mark's like, why don't you just do this at A16Z?
That's awesome.
And I was like, I hadn't really considered it because such a big firm, so specialized. I'm a generalist investor, a more talent driven early stage, and I think like would I fit in at 700 person firm like Horowitz, and he's like, let's talk about it with Ben. So then me, Ben, and Mark have a bunch of conversations. Catherine's involved too. The other partners get involved, and basically they had a desire to go much bigger on content,
cool,
like separate from me. And they kind of liked what I was up to at Turpentine with sort of this network approach.
Yep.
And they crafted the right dual role that's a mix of investing and a mix of kind of media network stuff. And that's how over a few month period, we just, kept falling in love with each other even more, in love with the opportunity. And so here I am.
No, there's this thing in venture, specifically investors. They spend all their time working with founders, and they think I need to be a founder. Like I have to start my own firm, and then you realize no, you can potentially have 1,000 times more impact if you join a platform and make it better and leverage all of those resources. So I think it makes a ton of sense. I want to go back way in your early days. How did you get so good at networking? I think it's you're probably the best to ever do it. The Michael Jordan of networking. And I don't say that lightly.
No, seriously.
It's extremely impressive. And I'm curious, if you identified early that you were just good at it, or it just felt like riding a bike and you didn't, it just was totally natural.
Yeah. What is interesting? First of all, I'll just say, I appreciate the compliment. And no one who's good at it wants to be known as the thing that sure. They want it to be like Delian's got a good network, but it's like a byproduct of the stuff that he does.
Sure.
And so, I would say hopefully similar too. I mean, I think the way I realized it, I was doing this music tech company out of college, Wrapped FM. It was kind of a retarded idea. It was like chat roulette for rap battles. It made no sense as a business, but it was just kind of a out of college project. We somehow raised the money for it. This is when Twitch was getting off the ground. People were like, hey, Twitch for music, maybe that'll work. And live, Justin TV, live video, etc. And people noticed that I had the skill for evangelism, like getting people excited about things, attracting talented people. What do great founders do? They attract capital and labor, right? And so I had some skill for that, even though the idea was dumb. And people were like, hey, you have something here. But I didn't put it together until Product Hunt, which is the thing I joined next, where Ryan was CEO and he really got that off the ground. But I helped him sort of bring that out of thin air, create a strong community and network. And in that period, I was like, this is my superpower. Like up until that point, up until age 24, 25, I hadn't identified a superpower that I had. And I was just like, I'm just going to triple down on this. And so then starting on deck and village. And what is it? I think it's just like a desire to like an obsession with people. Like who is everybody? What are they doing? But then also a desire to help them and think about sort of people dynamics. But then also that's at like highest level. But then the next level is like build communities and networks that sort of help each other, where people can help each other, like even when you're sleeping. And so that's what I spent a lot of time thinking about and doing.
I want to talk about media, but first let's talk about some of the industries that you're interested in on the investing side. Andreessen has a fund for every vertical now: bio, gaming, defense, crypto, enterprise. What's interesting to you, and is there any crossover? We kind of have this take that like media can be fun and lucrative, but media is really hard to invest in. If you want to invest in media, you got to be on the platform side. You got to be in Spotify, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Like those were the power law outcomes in media. People don't really think about them as media, but if you were in YouTube early, you did very well. Very hard to invest in companies that are more in the middle. What are you seeing in terms of, are you excited about any investments on the media side? And then also, what are you excited about in the other sectors of the Andreessen portfolio?
So I think Jessica Lesson really sort of helped popularize sort of the bootstrapped media company that Turpentine has followed. I think you guys are following. I think it doesn't make sense for this kind of business for the reasons that you sort of indicated, but people can do very well. And so in general, because I did a music company, a lot of people pitch me music. I'm like, I don't like this business as a business because I do media. People pitch me media. I don't want to invest in media companies, but I do want to build a lot of media at Andreesen Horowitz.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I do want to partner with a lot of independent creators like yourselves, like the Lenny Rachitskis, like the Harry Stebbings, like all these guys who are building really awesome cash flow businesses, super lean, making a ton of profit.
Sure.
Well, and sorry to interrupt. One thing I think is interesting is that venture outcomes require scale. Yet media, and one of the things that makes media is amazing is anti-scale, right? It's like having CNBC meets X, right?
Yeah,
it's like
that's
it's a niche thing, but it's great, for a very core audience. And on that note, I think you've done this very well with Turpentine in terms of like verticalizing out and being like, hey, there's this sort of show on a niche topic, and it may only be interesting to 50,000 people in the whole world, but those 50,000 people, like that's the show they're like waiting for it to drop, right? Or it's a group chat that only has 50 people, but it has, maybe like more activity for those 50 people than any other social platform that they use. So can you talk about how you think about like sizing sort of like projects, right? Because not everything that should be done should be massive, right?
100%. It's interesting. There's this business Industry Dive that really taught me about something. It's a business that not a lot of people know about, but it's immensely successful. A lot of people, when they think about media businesses of the last 15 years, they think about like BuzzFeed and Vox and it's kind of like Upworthy. These businesses raised a bunch of money in the 2010s and totally crashed. Right, there was a bunch of venture firms. This one included doing sort of consumer media businesses, and people thought they were going to ride the platforms, and they were big. They were growing, but then sort of the as you alluded to, the platforms took the value. It was where the value was. It was in the distribution, not in and these were just like content farms on top of them. But an undertold part of that story is that business media has actually done pretty well. This company, Industry Dive, which is just a collection of niche trade publications. So things like utilities, weight, HR, pharma, just like valuable niche like newsletters, sold for $500 million, I believe, to Informa, which I believe is like a $10 billion trade show company.
Wow.
So business media, business events, there's quite a good business there in trade stuff on the B2B side, because if you have the leading HR publication and you have 50,000, even 5,000 decision makers reading or listening to your thing, that becomes a great channel for people who are trying to sell to that audience to reach them, and they're willing to if making one sale can be tens of thousands of dollars for them, they're willing to spend quite a lot to reach that audience. So the premiums on the CPM are just fantastic. And so, and Sean Griffey, the CEO of Industry Dive, has been like educating the market on this. And so I heard him, and then I looked at his. I think they're incredible at business. I think incredible at sales. I wasn't like blown away by the content itself. They're a great business, and they built something much bigger than I have. But I was like, wow, I think more people could do this. And the Business Work Week also is doing this. And I wanted to do sort of a Silicon Valley take on that of like, Lenny Wojcicki is the GOAT of this for product managers, the newsletter. I think he's almost at like 1 million subscribers. And he's printing cash. And I was like, hey, there's going to be a Lenny for HR. There's going to be a Lenny for CFOs. There's going to be a Lenny for every position in every sector. I want to create that. I want to create this roll up. And we started on the podcast side because that's what I know. I think that there was a gap in the market for like, the best of X. And we did that. I think we had, reasonable success. And I was excited about adding additional businesses or business models on top of that, investing being one of them. And I think A16Z is the best place to do it.
Makes sense. What do you think about the different business models in media between ad sales, subscriptions, monetizing through trade shows or merch or products? I'm a big fan of Doug DeMuro. He kind of like, value captured at the very end of building massive scale with Cars and Bids, his online auction platform for cool cars made in the modern era. Yes, I'm a fan. I know his whole tagline. But in general, like what business models do you think work in tech? What business models do you think work in other industries, in trade publications versus more traditional journalism? How are you thinking about the landscape of like monetization of media?
Well, it's a really fascinating question. It depends on what niche. Like if you're as big as someone like Mr. Beast, you want like a mass market thing.
Like a chocolate bar.
Even Mr. Beast, I do wonder if, and I'm friends with him, and I think he's genius. But I do wonder if that's the most optimal business to be like. And I like he's also getting to gaming too. But like, should Mr. Beast have like sort of a Cash App competitor
I was pitching a VPN, Beast VPN, because he has a global audience, low churn, high margin. VPNs are not suitable for venture backing typically. It's all marketing. That's the entire expense is just getting people to install a VPN. So, it doesn't matter where his audience is. They can sign up for the VPN. It's silly, but I don't know. Probably not a good fit, but it was funny.
You guys had the founder of Honey on, who's a very good friend of mine, and he's building a really great business I just invested in. On the ad blocker side, but like Mr. Beast was saying that he brought a lot of Honey's traffic. And so should he have created a Honey competitor back? Like there's got to be something that's bigger, has better margins, than chocolate. That's more defensible.
Well, there's an interesting thing with media, which is like this idea of value creation versus value capture. And it's possible with media to create a massive amount of value, but not fully be able to capture it. That being said, one of the best ways to capture value is to just put out amazing content and then invest in the companies that sort of come around from that. So I think that people have had this idea of media, of one of the best business models for media being investing, yet that doesn't mean, starting a solo GP fund and just having a podcast necessarily. Like it can look a lot of different ways. And that's why I'm excited about Turpentine in the context of A16Z, because you can make the best podcast about biotech, and it's less about how do we scale this to millions of ad revenue, and more so like how do we just have the most important conversations in biotech happen on this podcast, and then invest in some of those companies and see the return from that.
I know you're still like second day on the job, but I'd love to know kind of how you are thinking about the current A16Z media landscape. People talk about like, oh, Future was kind of didn't roll out the way they wanted. At the same time, it's like if the named partner can go on Joe Rogan, like you're kind of winning. And so I think about like the Joe Rogan appearance as like probably worth 1,000 at bats that maybe, are strikeouts or whatever. But how do you balance the let's build an intermediate, like a in-house media product versus let's empower the team to go and make a statement on other shows, like what Mark did with the Rogan appearance?
Totally. Yeah, it's a fascinating question. So I'm still getting up to speed with,
Yeah.
with the exact history, but my outsider version of it is that the future. Well, let me step back. What I love about Andreessen, and it's not limited to Andreessen, but that they try a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Like you guys, right? Like TBPN. You guys had a few different iterations
Totally.
before coming to this one that worked.
Yep.
And people don't see that,
No.
you were making video content for years before this. And Jordy, you were making all sorts of like amazing branded content and doing all sorts of experiments. And you guys tried it with different people first, and you figured out the format that works.
Yep.
Like a couple years in or a few months in. So similarly, I think Future was a good idea. And I think it's possible there's some version of that comes back. They already do a lot of long form content.
I love their everyday carry for founders, where they would just ask the founders in the portfolio, hey, like, tell us what apps you have on your phone right now.
Yeah.
And that was it. And it was just like a listicle of like, okay, the founder of, some amazing company like Databricks, like what's he using for his email client? And it's like, that's just interesting. I don't know. It's like, it's like total insider baseball. It's totally like, oh, it's only Andreessen portfolio companies or whatever. But like, I don't care. I just want to know like what these people are using. It's interesting. I don't know.
Totally. So they took a first stab. I think there were a lot of great things about it. I think it also coincided with sort of the Andreessen decentralizing into different funds, right? Like they used to be a main fund and now they're sort of different funds. And so there's some org complexity perhaps around that. I think there's much more buy-in and much more like maturity in the org to do something like it again. That's not an immediate priority for me. I'm on the content side, separate from investing. I'm more focused on the podcasting to begin with. But to your question around own shows versus creators, I think we're gonna have a mix. So we have some flagship shows right now. We have the Ben and Mark show, we have the ACZ show. Then we're gonna have the vertical shows relative to the funds.
Totally.
But then I want to sort of really grow the Turpentine network. And the limitations of Turpentine were that we were a bootstrap business, so we have to make money from other shows. But Andreessen doesn't have those same limitations. So we want to do something like an affiliate network where we can partner with amazing shows, help them get distribution, help them make more money, and kind of make it a no-brainer for them to be part of this sort of broader podcast network that just sort of extends our influence and friends. And I think what's interesting is that if this works in podcasting, there isn't like a premier tech podcast network that works with like the best shows. Like, and there are some, I love what O'Shaughnessy's doing, but that's like 7 shows, and those shows are great. And I love, the HubSpot's doing some good stuff, but like, Lenny's not on a network, Dorkesh is not on a network. There's a bunch of people, because they don't need to be. But if you can make it a no-brainer, I think there's something interesting there. And if that works in podcasting, maybe you can work with newsletter writers, maybe you can work with YouTube creators more broadly. This kind of like extended, like I love what Slow is doing. They have a creator fund.
There was a super cool Andreessen Games video that was produced by Secret Tape, which runs this video game documentary channel called No Clip. So they will do like the full history, the most definitive documentary about like Half-Life or Counter-Strike, and they'll go and interview all the people that worked on it. These really, really amazing things. And it was actually a viral video. Like it got almost 500,000 views, and it's this is why games like Baldur's Gate 3 are so rare. Just like a deep dive on the history of Baldur's Gate, this like great role-playing game. And I just saw this and I was like, oh, like that, like it's awesome that they found the right match of like the team behind No Clip and these documentaries, Secret Tape. Like they're great at creating, and clearly Andreessen Games, A16Z Games was just like, go run with it, and it worked out really, really well. So I love the idea of like that partnership model you've described.
What do you think about the infrastructure around group chats, right? Like nobody wants to download another app, but at the same time, like you do run into limitations. Everybody that's built on, you've built a number of communities, right? And I'm sure you've like hit the limits on Slack, hit the limits on, run into issues on Discord, Signal has its limitations, WhatsApp, like, how do you think about scaling these sort of like vertical, group chat? Like if a group chat's just like it's a curated social network, right? And how do you think about the infrastructure surrounding that? Do you think there's opportunities there?
Yeah. So at first, just zooming out, I think a lot of the most interesting conversations over the last 5 years to me have been in group chats, and I've been in some with you guys where that's happened. And I think it's just because, Twitter, X, just social in general became a little bit too noisy, a little bit too public, and you needed to have these kind of like private spaces just to have conversations without a bunch of people sort of like getting in the replies. And there could have been a world where Twitter, that just happened in the DMs, but for whatever reason, that it moved out to different group chats. And so, but the platforms are not really built for, Signal, WhatsApp, they're not really built for like hundreds of people in a chat, right? And they get notifications for every message. The identity's messed up.
Sometimes John Coogan just adds a bunch of random friends on a Christmas Eve. You have to text me and say, hey, are you going to stop or are you going to keep going, John? Because I made you an admin when this is a lot smaller and there's much more powerful people in the chat now. Why are you inviting all your friends?
Yeah, that was back when I tried to moderate the chat, that since Balaji goes Balaji and I can't.
Yep, he goes full Balaji all the time. It's great. That's what you live for.
So anyway. I've thought about this for a long time, and I worked with Shriram when he was at Andreessen, because he built out their group chat operation. They basically have dozens of group chats, different verticals, different categories in WhatsApp. It's all separate chats. There's no like master directory, So, I mean, it should be is like a real social network of like 1,000 super interesting people, and you can cross promote, and it should be sort of, interoperable in some way with certain permissions. WhatsApp's not built for it. Right now, we've just optimized for ease of use. I think that in the next 5 years, someone is going to build a group chat social network where every day, well, you guys cover the current thing every day, but Twitter is too slow in the way that like Twitter sort of obsoleted the traditional media by just being way faster. And I think there's going to be something that's even way faster than Twitter. And by that, like Clubhouse got into it a little bit, whereas it's basically like the beef of the day. Every day someone gets in a fight or there's some drama, and there's going to be a platform where they just fight live. I feel like that's just going to happen. Like I remember in Clubhouse with Mike Solana and Chesa Boudin, infinite entertainment. And so group chat is just so much more live.
I mean, Vlad Tenev and Elon Musk, that was iconic.
So I was actually working on a product that was going to be like Clubhouse for group chats, where you chat live with a public audience. You can sort of tier the permission gates, and there's a speaker and an audience.
That's fascinating.
Clubhouse really had some magic, but I actually think people said they got too big, and they did, but. And they're pioneers, so kudos to them. But I think that also the audio format's a bit hard. You can't like scroll audio the way you could scroll text. And so I think group chat format is the right one. I was working on it, but then I spent time with Mark Andreessen and decided to have other plans. And I also met another team that I'm not going to announce here yet, but introduce you to them. And when they're ready to announce, they will. Who's building this? That's cool. And I think it's a really exciting product. I think as you said, Jordy, the bar for a new app is really high, but there's a bunch of different ways that WhatsApp and Signal just aren't built for it. And I think you could do a 10x better product there. So
No, I was asking in hopes that you were incubating or funding or
he found
something there.
He found it.
You found it. You found the right one, it sounds like. But yeah, it just seems like such an obvious opportunity. When I hear about you running, multiple groups, I'm just like, wow, it sounds really exhausting. The second that you get even just one is a lot.
So even one is a lot.
Excited to see that roll out.
I have a hot take I want you to react to. Market maps are underrated.
Oh, interesting. Flesh out the case.
I just think that they got really overhyped, and they were the basic mechanism of a market map is it's inherently viral, because when Andreessen puts out a market map of all the gaming startups, every gaming founder is going to be on that list. They're all going to repost it. And so it's just naturally bait for the algorithm that it's going to get a lot of attention, a lot of quote tweets. Oh, thanks so much for including me. Right. But then it became very cringy, and it was no, you should be thinking more deterministically about the future. You should be more aggressive. You should be thinking more about even like bigger problems like the far future, the world. But you know, I've gone back to market maps, and I think there's maybe something interesting there, just to kind of take you on a tour of all the different approaches when there is uncertainty about something like AI at the application layer and how that's applying even to legal. Like everyone kind of knows Harvey, but there's probably 7 different companies in the legal AI space, probably
70.
50, 70, and they're all taking slightly different approaches. And it's kind of a nice like little window into this industry that you might not be immersed in. And so it creates some value for, you know, keeps the associates busy, keeps the partners busy. But it's also just maybe we can get past the criticism that like, oh, market maps are too basic and cringe, and maybe just go to like, hey, actually they make sense. If you read a Goldman Sachs report or a Morgan Stanley report on Wall Street, you would often see something that looks like a market map. It's just instantiated in equity research, right? Or equity capital markets research.
I'll go further. So I agree with you, but I'll one up you and say I think lists are underrated. Like Forbes has trained us to think that
yes.
You know, the lists suck, or they're obviously always gamed, or everyone's going to go to jail if they're on a list. Hypothetically speaking, but you know, we've joked about sort of the, you're like the Forbes 29 under 29. Or 25.
I think you should do that. I mean, I don't know if it makes as much sense now.
Is best suited to
maybe we do it. Maybe we do it, but
or collaborate or something. But discover, like knowing what people think about people is really important, and it's what we do all the time. We're like, who's good? You know, who's emerging? Who should we pay more attention to? And I think that functionality, sort of like market maps, we've like the execution has gotten sloppy, and so we sort of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But those things, they do perform best, which is why they get gamed. But if they're good, they're really
valuable. Totally. Yeah. We're actually going to do a Midas list competitor. It's going to be 100 of the top VCs. It's $100,000 to be on the list, $1 million if you want to be on the top 10. But yeah, just email Jordy if you want to be on that list. If you're listening, we'd love to have you.
Dude, I love your whole corporate media like brand.
Oh yeah, independent media is dead. Corporate media is the future.
You're
either backed by a $1 trillion venture fund, or you're shilling for Ramp and Bezel and AdQuick and Numeral and ASleep and Wander. You're one of the others.
On a more serious note, I'm curious if you're seeing from group chats the edge that you used to be able to get from the internet. Like internet used to be a place you could, you know, Blake Robbins talks about hanging out on the edge of the internet, but you could be in these sort of different sub communities and sort of discover somebody. And you know, we had this kid, this 21-year-old named Roy, who like rocketed to like almost 80,000 followers in like a few months.
Serious.
And historically that would have been like some, you know, maybe he would have gotten kicked out of Columbia, and like 2 people would have heard about it on X.
Yeah, no way.
But now it's like information moves so quickly. Is it, you know, are you seeing group chats as like the sort of where you get an edge, right? Because it's like, you know, more niche down. There's like less noise, there's less attention. Maybe if there's 1,000 people in the group chat, like, you know, there's less like almost like leakage. Like how do you, where do you think about?
So it's really interesting. So a few years ago, when people were more sort of centralized on Twitter, there was more of a desire to you know, it was critical to go to group chats because someone would sort of, it was quicker to cancel you or call you out, or there was just like more friction. But social media has balkanized a bit, right? The whole blue sky exodus, sort of, you know, people are Threads, whatever, people leaving X, like it's a bit, and then Elon sort of, you know, with his sort of new impact on sort of the like free speech dynamic, or even just like everything's about politics all the time. So people are more comfortable speaking up on X, but because they're more comfortable speaking up in public, they're also more comfortable speaking up in private. So I've seen what happens is these like 8 people group chats, you know, me and John had a great one for like a couple of years, there's less of a need for them. It disbanded. Now we're in like multi-hundred people group chats because people are more public. And I think it's cool that, you know, we have people who disagree. Like we have this, you know, one chat where our good friend Mark Cuban gets in, you know, great debates. You know,
I thought you weren't supposed to say people's names in that chat. I thought the whole reason was Chatham House rules. You're just supposed to say a you know, billionaire who's somewhat left wing. He was lampooned on Silicon Valley.
Reality show. Pitches. He went on a podcast with Vivek. They had a
Yeah.
debate. So this is public because I
Yeah.
said their names. They did a debate on DEI in our chat, and
Sure.
then they took it to the podcast.
Oh, that's cool.
They mentioned the chat, so I'm comfortable mentioning their
Okay.
names as people who've had debates,
Yeah.
and it's just fascinating. Like, he doesn't want to go on Twitter because he gets dunked on a billion times.
Sure.
But in the chat, he'll get dunked on, but with more thoroughness.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
we
Less
all learn
less,
from it. And
brigading.
he gets some dunks in too. And that's a dynamic you just won't see anywhere
Yeah.
else. And I didn't even see it a few years ago because you wouldn't even think to put people who disagree
Yeah.
in the same chat. So yeah, I'm still seeing the alpha.
Well, the most important group chat to me is the one that's just me and you, Erik, our one-on-one group chat. That's the best group chat in my DMs. Thank you so much for coming on. This is fantastic.
Hey, Erik, little request. You're the first Andreessen partner to come on the show. Let's get the rest on.
Let's get
Oh,
the
I'm
rest
We need a
on.
lot, we
Send
need a
them
lot
over.
more. Thank you for.
I'm here to, only Nixon can go to China. Only Torenberg can go to TBPN. I'm here to broker the relationship.
Are you
it's great to have
Kissinger or
you.
Nixon in this analogy?
Yeah,
I'm
it's a good question.
confused. I'm
Yeah,
not
perhaps
tracking.
Kissinger.
I think you're
No,
Kissinger.
it's great to have you.
You sneak in through the back door,
exactly.
and then Nixon makes his arrival.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
we're very excited to watch you work and
Yeah.
collaborate. And
It's fantastic.
congratulations again on the move. It's
We'll
awesome.
talk to you soon.
Much guys.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye.